Developing right now on Morning News Now, federal fallout this morning, tension growing across Chicago as President Trump escalates his threats to send National Guard troops and immigration agents into the city.
We have not called for this. Our people have not asked for this. Must take immediate, drastic action to protect our people from federal overreach.
Plus, the CDC facing scrutiny following a scathing new op-ed. Several of the agency's former directors accusing Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. of, quote, endangering every American's health. All this as lawmakers return to Capitol Hill after a one-month break. We'll take you to Washington. In Afghanistan, a desperate search for survivors as the death toll climbs from this week's 6.0 magnitude earthquake. We have the latest. Also this morning, September swelter. Parts of the U.S. bracing for another day of searing temperatures with tens of millions of Americans now under heat alerts. We are tracking the conditions and which areas could break records. Plus, a new food trend taking flight, literally. Restaurants now giving diners the option to taste a little bit of everything for about the same price as a regular plate. More on the special menu option that is cooking up big business. Now, I am too picky to try something like that, but I do know people who are like,
but the point of being if you are picky, is that you can find the thing that maybe you like that you'll order in the future.
Right, and that I maybe wouldn't have tried otherwise.
Exactly. Yeah. There you go. We'll dig into that in a little bit. Good morning. Good to have you with us on this Tuesday. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. We are going to begin this morning with President Trump's federal crackdown taking aim at the city of Chicago. Local leaders are bracing for a major immigration operation after Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem confirmed plans to expand ICE enforcement in the city over the weekend. Meanwhile, President Trump has threatened to deploy federal forces there to tackle crime.
Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson signed an executive order Saturday in response. It directs the city's police officers not to collaborate with military personnel on two fronts: police patrols and civil immigration enforcement. Illinois' Democratic Governor J.B. Pritzker also weighed in, accusing the Trump administration of keeping Illinois officials in the dark.
No one in the administration, the president or anybody under him, has called anyone in my administration. So it's clear that in secret they're planning this, well, it's an invasion with U.S. troops if they in fact do that.
This follows a violent Labor Day weekend in Chicago. At least 7 people were killed, 53 wounded in shootings across the city. All this as President Trump claims that the nation's capital is now a crime-free zone after he deployed the National Guard to Washington, D.C. last month. Stats show that while the district is not crime-free, crime has dropped there in the past month, especially violent crime. NBC News legal analyst Danny Ceballos is here to break down how all this could end up playing out in court. First, let's go to NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez, who is in Washington. Gabe, good morning. So which federal agencies are actually expected to mobilize in Chicago in the coming days, and do we know exactly what they'll be doing there?
Hi there, Joe and Savannah. Good morning. Well, 2 federal law enforcement officials tell NBC News that it will be ICE, Border Patrol, and also some other federal agencies that will be in Chicago to expand these operations. And as you mentioned, some of it will be immigration enforcement. We also understand that the federal authorities have secured the use of a naval station on the outskirts of Chicago to act as office space and parking space for some of these agents. And yes, this comes after the president deployed National Guard troops and federalized the D.C. Police Department. He says it has had a significant effect on crime. And in fact, Washington, D.C. Mayor Bowser has also said as much. But there have been concerns here about the federal takeover of D.C. Still in Chicago, the president does not have the same authority, of course, that he has here in the district. So local officials there are concerned about what this could mean moving forward. Joe and Savannah.
Gabe, so yesterday on Labor Day, thousands of people rallied in downtown Chicago. They were protesting the Trump administration's crackdown. Tell us how local officials are reacting to this here, but also what they're doing there if they don't want the feds there to tackle the crime problem there that Joe laid out a moment ago.
Well, you mentioned, Savannah, that Mayor Brandon Johnson over there in Chicago, Democratic mayor, he signed an executive order over the weekend instructing local officials not to collaborate with ICE. Now, this comes after Chicago and other cities across the country have been seen as so-called sanctuary cities. This is what the Trump administration has been trying to fight against. But also there has been some mixed reaction in Chicago. There was one alderman in particular that seems to welcome this federal intervention. Listen to what he had to say.
I had 2 teenagers shot in my community this weekend alone. So when I hear my Democratic colleagues tell me, don't worry, crime is down, Trump stay home in Washington, I have a real hard time accepting that.
Still, though, in addition to the mayor, as you also mentioned in the introduction, Governor J.B. Pritzker is railing against this possible deployment of more federal resources to Illinois. So certainly some mixed reactions there. And you saw the protests yesterday on the streets of Chicago, Johnson.
Gabe, we also know the president is planning to make some kind of announcement later this afternoon. Do we know anything about what he is planning to discuss?
Well, look, this is getting a lot of attention because, you know, for a week now, this is extremely rare that President Trump has not had a scheduled event in front of reporters. He was only seen over the weekend going to his Virginia golf club. But we do understand this morning from a senior White House official that this afternoon's announcement at the White House is set to be focused on defense. That's all we're hearing from the White House at this point. Again, it comes days after the president last week. He only appeared in front of cameras in front of that cabinet meeting, and it's now been a week since he's spoken to reporters.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez, thank you so much.
Let's now bring in Danny Cevallos and break down the legal side of the standoff between the Trump administration and Illinois officials. Danny, good morning. So, Governor Pritzker, he says that if troops arrive in Chicago, he will take legal action against the Trump administration. On what grounds can he do that? And walk us through kind of what control Trump does have over a state like Illinois rather than something like the District of Columbia.
It's a different analysis involving the District of Columbia because District of Columbia is essentially an entire federal district. The president is essentially always in control of the National Guard, at least in theory. To send National Guard troops into another state or to use that state's National Guard troops, the president can federalize them, but only under specific statutory authority. And if he does federalize them, it's a little bit of an open question whether he can send them in without the governor's consent. But the Posse Comitatus Act is a law that prevents those guardsmen from performing direct law enforcement. In other words, policing directly is traditionally the power of the state, not the federal government. But they can assist in other things. For example, assist ICE in their missions. They can protect federal property. So as long as they're acting within a statutory authority, then they can be in there and presumably without governor consent.
Let's talk about this executive order from Mayor Johnson. He's directing the city's law department to use, quote, every legal mechanism to try to stop President Trump's potential plans. What could that look like?
It would look like lawsuits. It would not look like physical opposition. It's more likely to be filing suit in court to try and stop this, which you really don't need an executive order to do. You can just do it. You can just file those actions and get a judge to try to enter an injunction. Now, where it gets really tricky is what judge. You have to go to a federal judge, I would expect, and then you have to get an injunction, which is very difficult. But look, an unintended consequence of a Trump administration is that an area of constitutional law that has traditionally been gray will now be sketched out or decided by a court.
Also, we want to ask you about the matter of immigration enforcement. A couple days ago, this federal judge in Washington state had blocked the Trump administration from being able to deport these hundreds of unaccompanied minors back to their home country of Guatemala. The administration had said it was this attempt to reunite families. But walk us through what exactly is going on here, why the judge sided with the attorneys representing these kids and what it ultimately meant. Because some of them, as you're seeing on your screen right now, were already on planes.
Right. So the argument that the attorneys for the children made essentially is that children are treated differently under the law. Yes, there are expedited removal procedures, but when it comes to children, there's another law, the Trafficking Victims Protection Reauthorization Act, or the TVPRA. It actually, the criminal side of that statute was recently used to prosecute Sean Diddy Combs. So it's a very expansive statute. This separate section provides for protections for children, procedural protections. In other words, they get certain rights that adults might not in the removal process. And the argument was they weren't given those procedures. I caution that they may still get those procedures, the children, and it may eventually result in their removal. But at least on this emergency basis, the children, or the court concluded that the children were entitled to those protections, and that's at least why they put a pause. And that's really all this is an immediate emergency pause to preserve the status quo and make sure some irreparable harm doesn't happen.
Danny Ceballos, thank you as always.
Congress returns today after a one-month break, and lawmakers will need to tackle a list of pressing issues.
Yeah, from funding the government to the lingering concerns surrounding the Jeffrey Epstein case, lawmakers are expected to have their work cut out for them over the next few weeks.
NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Melanie Zanona joins us now. Mel, perhaps the biggest task facing lawmakers, stop me if you've heard this before, funding the federal government. Those funds are expected to run out, I know, by the end of the month. So where do things stand right now on that front? And what are going to be some of the biggest challenges facing lawmakers this time around?
Yeah, good morning, guys. It is only the first day back for Congress, and we are already on shutdown watch. And that is because they only have a few weeks to come to an agreement. They haven't done so yet, and there are already some major red flags, some major warning signs about how this is all going to come together. But what it really boils down to is whether Democrats are going to put up the votes and essentially bail Republicans out because they need Democratic votes, at least in the Senate, to get this done. Now, earlier this year, Chuck Schumer did allow him and some other Senate Democrats to provide the votes, and essentially they did bail Republicans out and funded the government. But Schumer got a lot of flack from his base over that. They really want to see their Democratic leadership fighting Trump, sticking it to the Trump administration. And there's been a lot of dynamic changes since that moment as well. I mean, just look at the last week, some of the controversial actions that Trump has taken, really riling up especially Democratic members of Congress, from firing the head of the CDC to even this more recent move, which is something called a pocket rescissions, essentially the White House deciding to cancel funding that had already been approved by Congress without seeking their congressional approval. So Democrats are sitting there wondering, why would they agree to fund the government if Trump is just going to do whatever he wants? So all of these going to be huge dynamics that we need to watch over the next few weeks, but definitely barreling towards a real showdown at the end of the month here, guys.
Mel, the other issue here, the Jeffrey Epstein case, I mean, that is expected to cast a shadow over Washington once again this week. What is the latest?
Yeah, we could see some pretty explosive moments on Capitol Hill this week. That is because we're expecting to hear from some of the survivors and victims of Jeffrey Epstein's sexual abuse. First up today, a group of victims are going to meet privately with the House Oversight Committee. It's going to be a bipartisan meeting with Republicans and Democrats, but those victims want to remain private. So afterwards, we are expecting to hear from some of the lawmakers. They're going to come out on the steps and do what's known as a press gaggle. But tomorrow, there's going to be a different group of some of these survivors. 10 of them is what we're hearing, who have never spoken out publicly before, that are going to appear at a public press conference to tell their tales. We are hearing that could potentially be a really just explosive, powerful moment. And the reason why this matters, guys, is because there's an effort, a bipartisan effort on Capitol Hill to force a floor vote on a resolution that would essentially release all of the Epstein files from the government immediately and without redactions. They need the support of 218 members of Congress, though. The thinking, though, is once they hear from some of these victims, there's going to be a real flood of members who want to sign on to that resolution. So that's something we're watching as well.
And Mel, we are going to dig into this next topic more in just a moment, but we obviously expect Congress to push for answers about what we're seeing at the CDC, the turnover, the administration's deeply controversial approach to vaccines. What can we expect to see with Congress back now?
Yeah, well, the secretary is actually going to be testifying on Capitol Hill this week. That is a hearing that was already in the works prior to the shakeup at the CDC. He's going to appear before the Senate Finance Committee later this week. But of course, this is going to be an opportunity for senators to really grill him on not only the firing of the CDC director and some of the high-profile departures that followed, but also his own views on vaccines and some of his anti-vaccine rhetoric. I'm particularly interested in what Bill Cassidy is going to say. He's a Republican who sits on that committee. He also chairs the health committee. He provided a pivotal confirmation vote for Kennedy, despite having some concerns about the secretary. And since then, Kennedy has broken a number of promises that he directly made to people like Cassidy. So the question is whether Republicans still have confidence in the secretary and if they're going to do anything about it. So just a huge, huge week on Capitol Hill, guys.
No kidding. We'll keep you busy. Mel, thank you.
And that's where we turn now, is to that turmoil inside the Centers for Disease Control. It is continuing to grow. 9 former CDC heads wrote a scathing op-ed in the New York Times blasting the current health secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., for his vaccine skepticism, which they say is risking lives. This comes as confusion is growing over new COVID vaccine guidelines. We have our NBC News medical contributor, Dr. Kavita Patel, with us to walk us through exactly what this means. Dr. Patel, good morning. Always great to have you with us. So, I mean, first, just walk us through your big concerns. And if you could lay out here what we heard from these former heads of the CDC, essentially coming together in the New York Times to express their deep concerns about what they're seeing.
Yeah, I think at the core of their concerns, Savannah and Joe, were that basically the CDC no longer can be trusted because of how the Trump administration has treated, or at least not treated, the leadership, i.e. not listening to its leaders, not having the data, not letting the science come forward, and even replacing. This started months ago, and the directors pointed that out, that this started months ago with the replacement of the Advisory Commission on Immunization Practices, or ACIP. And that's now led to where we are today, where it is incredibly confusing because you have the Food and Drug Administration, which is saying, unless you're over 65 or have high-risk conditions or are very, very young, you really don't need the COVID vaccine. And in fact, they're kind of attributing it to getting rid of COVID mandates when there are no mandates at this point in time. And it's spilling over now because of different states' regulations around who can give the vaccine and under what guidance. It's spilling over into over a dozen states where patients just can't get it either without a prescription or not at all until they get further guidance. So the country is in a patchwork for this respiratory virus season as of today.
A lot of people are keeping an eye on what the president says about this. So yesterday there was a post to Truth Social. He demanded that pharmaceutical companies release data on the success of what he's calling their COVID drugs, not vaccines. He said drugs to, quote, clear up this mess at the CDC. So first, what do we know about how effective COVID shots have been over the past few years? And no matter what that data shows, with a vaccine skeptic heading HHS, do you think pharmaceutical companies will have much influence here?
Yeah, great question. So some of them that we are going to have to watch and play out. So let's talk about the efficacy and effectiveness. Efficacy refers to the kind of basically how well the vaccines work during those clinical trials. And you remember, it was actually under Trump where Operation Warp Speed and the ability to do these clinical trials, not fast, they weren't cutting corners, but it was the ability to recruit literally around the globe millions of people to be in these trials. But those trials showed the vaccine was effective. Different versions of the vaccines from different manufacturers had efficacy in the 90s. That's pretty high for a vaccine. And then in the real world, we see effectiveness, and that's also been reproduced to be in the 90s. What does that mean? It means that it has a 90% chance of reducing your risk for hospitalization, for death, and from severe consequences compared to not taking anything. So that's been shown now in almost billions of cases of people getting vaccines around the world, really. So there shouldn't be any question. And then as to drugs, there aren't that many drugs for COVID. We've got basically several antiviral drugs, same statistics around high numbers that would pass any threshold for the Food and Drug Administration. In fact, what's weird is the Food and Drug Administration basically just last week doubled down and said that this is a safe vaccine and it's effective. They just put those restrictions on the age. So very confusing messaging, not just from the CDC director, FDA, HHS, but also from the president.
Dr. Patel, our viewers might not know that you have a deep background in public health policy. You worked in the Obama White House. You know some of the people that wrote this op-ed. You've been in the same realm as them professionally for quite some time. If you could just sort of put in context so that we can understand, viewers at home can understand, just how concerned you think these former leaders are, maybe you know from speaking to them, to get together and make such a public statement in this manner.
I do. I've thankfully and gratefully, humbly worked with many of them through different administrations. By the way, you see people representing decades of experience in that New York Times op-ed. And I can tell you, not easy to get CDC directors across that many decades and that many administrations to come together and have such a common message. And I should tell the American public that because of that rarity, you really should sit up and listen. It doesn't matter what the publication is. It doesn't matter what the outlet is, but the message is the same, that the trust in the CDC has eroded and that action has to be taken now. I think one of the most concerning sentences in that op-ed was that we're basically on our own, that we have to work together to take care of each other as a community. And I know those CDC directors, and they would never have come to this point unless they were pushed over the brink, because there really is there's a brotherhood, a sisterhood that happens amongst these directors. They only have been in each other's shoes. So They understand how hard the job is, but that just shows you where we are today. It's very concerning.
We were speaking with a relative last night who was just deeply confused about what to do about a COVID shot, whether it's going to be covered, where to get it, and we don't have a lot of answers right now. I'm guessing you're hearing from patients right now who are also confused and have a lot of questions. What is your advice to people right now who are trying to figure this out?
Right. First and foremost is just think about layered protection while you're also trying to search simultaneously for where to get the vaccine. Layered protection, all the things we talk about, crowded spaces. It's okay to bring out a mask. Also thinking about washing your hands if you have symptoms, to kind of stay away from people till those symptoms resolve, fevers go away. Meanwhile, get on a website. Almost everybody has a physician who has kind of a portal on their website, so that those have information. But you can also go to the retail pharmacies, which have been putting up information and kind of let you put in your name, your date of birth, what zip code you're in, and then it does kind of spit out explicit advice. There are COVID vaccines available in many parts of the country, but again, with some of those restrictions, 65 or older, or you need to self-attest in many cases, meaning check that you have one of the following list of high-risk conditions. Keep in mind, those high-risk conditions are broad and expansive. I encourage viewers and listeners to actually read through, because you probably qualify. Much of America does. So try to actually act now. You can also call our offices. We may or may not be able to figure out how to get you the vaccine, because we don't have them in our offices just yet around many parts of the country. But the pharmacies and doctors' offices are starting to get them. In terms of cost, ask your doctor, but we are also trying to verify with insurance. And ultimately, that's the place we're going to go to. We're going to have to send that bill in. We're going to probably ask you to sign a waiver that if the insurance company doesn't cover it, we might need to send you a bill. We're looking at about $100 to $140 out of pocket cost. But ask these questions first so you don't get surprised.
All right. Dr. Kavita Patel, important stuff this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Today, 22 million people from Washington state to California are under heat alerts, where daytime temps in some spots could reach nearly 110 degrees. On Sunday, storms brought flooding to the Midwest and Texas, where 2 people were killed Sunday. Those storms halted flights in Dallas on a busy travel holiday. A record 17.4 million travelers passed through TSA security checkpoints over Labor Day weekend. NBC News correspondent Dana Griffin has the details.
Travel woes for some passengers this Labor Day. At Newark Liberty International, dozens of delays and a ground stop, the FAA citing staffing. Another ground stop at Reagan National due to volume. And at Dallas-Fort Worth, flights halted because of weather. The TSA expected to screen 17.4 million passengers returning home from Labor Day weekend. Out west, a different holiday challenge for LA County lifeguards.
They're going to be out on the sand looking for rip currents and people in distress.
Nearly 600 rescues over the weekend as dangerous rip currents and elevated surf impact beaches.
We've seen periods of these massive waves breaking at least 6 feet. This is adding to the danger.
The power of the wave is very, very impressive.
Families undeterred by conditions, but keeping a close watch.
It's very easy for a little child to disappear.
Across the West, hot temperatures impacting 25 million people, some states seeing 10 to 20 degrees above average. While in Texas, police say 2 people were killed and a third missing during flash flooding on Sunday that left drivers stranded and rivers swollen. In San Antonio, a man had to be rescued by raft. Back in California, when swimmers get this warning,
We'll go out and just talk to those people, make sure they're safe, bring them back in, and then redirect them into a safer location.
All right, well, it looks like there's another scorching hot day on the way for the West Coast this morning.
Yeah, NBC meteorologist Angie Lassman joins us with the forecast. What can we expect, Angie?
Hi, guys. Good morning. We can expect some warm temperatures out west. We've got 19 million people under these heat alerts. Notice where you see the heat warnings, though. It's mainly focused across parts of the Pacific Northwest, where we once again are going to be running warmer than normal, but also taking a stab at some record warmth across that region. We've got high 90s expected in Boise, low 90s expected in Billings. Even across parts of Southern California, we're going to be running at least 5 to 10 degrees above normal. Farther east, specifically across the middle of the country and along the East Coast, we're cooler than normal. So temperatures in Kansas City really just going to top out into the upper 70s, a little below average for this time of year, but we really start to get a dose of what fall feels like across parts of the upper Midwest and the northern plains as we get into tomorrow. Just 64 degrees for your high temperature in Minneapolis tomorrow. Of course, cooler in the morning hours. Omaha reaches a high temperature of low 70s. It's still going to be hot out west, so you're still going to see temperatures into the 80s and 90s for our folks across the Pacific Northwest, but we'll start to see some of these kind of milder fall afternoons settling in, especially for places like Chicago as we round out the work week. Mid 60s to upper 60s as we head from Thursday through Saturday. Meanwhile, big picture look of what you can expect for the week ahead. Here's today. We've got those mild highs and a whole lot of sunshine for most of the East Coast. Just a couple of spots that are going to deal with some of that rain. It's parts of the South, parts of Florida, and then some of these thunderstorms as a cold front works through across parts of the upper Midwest. You'll notice those thunderstorms ramping up into the afternoon hours. And then we look ahead to Thursday, more of these showers and thunderstorms shifting off to the east. So places like the Kentucky Valley and then inching into parts of the interior Northeast are going to see some of that rain. And we'll also have the potential for some of these monsoon storms to pop up across parts of the the Southwest. How about that? Try it for a third time. All right, that flood threat stays with us on Friday. It'll be quite hot in the South, guys. 90s on tap along the Gulf Coast, and even parts of the Mid-Atlantic will see temperatures quite warm, mid-80s to upper 80s by the time we finish out our work week. But the cool air, the fall air, will be in place for the Midwest.
Fall. It's basically here.
I know. I mean, it is really
like clockwork.
Kind of feeling that way. It's about time now. We're post Labor Day. I'm willing to discuss it now.
I mean, we keep saying the unofficial end to summer was Labor Day, and Mother Nature got the hint.
Yeah.
It's got a calendar. All right. Thanks, Angie.
Thank you.
Much more to come here on Morning News. Now, later this hour, a show of force in China as President Xi Jinping meets with Russian President Vladimir Putin on the eve of a massive military parade. We're going to take you to Beijing.
Up first, though, right after the break, rescue crews racing to find survivors buried in the rubble after a devastating earthquake. The latest is next. Stay with us.
We are back with the latest on a devastating earthquake that hit eastern Afghanistan overnight on Sunday.
This morning, rescuers are continuing the search for survivors. Many still feared to be trapped under the rubble. The Taliban spokesman says more than 1,400 people have been killed, while more than 3,100 have been injured.
NBC News Chief International Correspondent Keir Simmons joins us now. Keir, good morning. So where do things stand right now? Just how complicated are the rescue efforts in this mountainous area of Afghanistan?
Complicated and desperate, Joe. That number killed that you mentioned, the exact number is 1,411. And then, as you mentioned, more than 3,000 injured. Another figure from the government in Afghanistan, 5,000 buildings demolished, although there are others suggesting it's 8,000. And the issue here is that it is a remote part of Afghanistan. Kunar province is worst hit, and it is somewhere that is difficult to get to at the best of times. And of course, now this isn't the best of times, with roads blocked by the earthquake itself. And so, very likely, through the day, we will see the numbers of those killed and injured rise, perhaps dramatically, and not least because, as you mentioned at the top there, Joe, there is a race against time, and this happened on Sunday. We are now into Tuesday, and as anyone knows who's watched these terrible stories of earthquakes, as each day passes, the chances of finding people alive become more remote.
Craig, Afghanistan, of course, already suffering several things here, but this crippling economic crisis due to the withdrawal of international aid when the Taliban returned to power. How is the international community responding to the country's plea for assistance?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the average wage where this earthquake happened is $1 a day, so poverty is widespread. there. The country I'm in right now, the United Arab Emirates, is sending aid. The UN says it is sending aid. The Taliban government is leading the rescue effort, which is some irony, isn't it? And there are pictures of Taliban airlifting by helicopter because it's the only way to reach some of these places, children who have been injured. The Taliban are calling for international help. There is a question, of course, inevitably over where that money goes. The British are talking about ensuring that it doesn't go to the Taliban, that it does go to rescue efforts. So the question of how to get help to this very isolated place is doubly impacted by the reality of the politics in Afghanistan at this stage.
Yeah, and Keir, considering the U.S.'s complicated relationship with Afghanistan, do we know if the U.S. is going to support any aid efforts at all?
It's a good question. Obviously, the changes with U.S. aid is another factor that people are pointing to. Whether or not it's possible for the U.S. to join the effort, we will see. And again, the question again here is not just about how much money can be sent, how much help can be sent. Because remember, where I am in the Gulf right now, there are huge aid facilities and a lot of capability here, and we're very close. We're just a 4-hour flight away. So it is possible to get to Afghanistan. All of this can happen. But again, there just is a reality about just trying to get to these villages, which is in itself, you can send blankets, but how do you get blankets to the people who need them?
Keir Simmons, appreciate your reporting. Thank you.
Well, more than 20 world leaders are arriving in China for what's set to be the country's largest ever military parade. Tomorrow's event commemorates the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II and Japan's defeat in China. Among those in attendance, Russian President Vladimir Putin and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. This comes in the wake of a high-profile meeting between Chinese leader Xi Jinping and Indian Prime Minister Modi and Mr. Putin. NBC News international correspondent Janice Mackey-Freyer has the latest.
It will be an historic gathering here for the military parade, which will show off China's latest missiles, fighter jets, and hardware, as well as geopolitical clout, with the leaders of Russia, North Korea, Iran, and others joining Chinese leader Xi Jinping. The first time the leaders of those 4 countries will appear together. Now, the parade is meant to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II, but Western diplomats and dignitaries are largely avoiding it because of Russian President Vladimir Putin, who's among the guests. Putin had a bilateral meeting today with Xi Jinping where they declared, again, how close their strategic partnership is. And at a summit of leaders over the weekend, Putin held hands with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi before they took a long car ride together and embraced Xi Jinping. The idea that these states can present an alternative to the U.S., and all of it helping Putin to ease his political isolation since meeting with President Trump about Ukraine. Now, the parade here will be China's largest ever, right through Tiananmen Square. The security is intense. People along the parade route aren't even allowed to look out the window. Kim Jong-un is arriving to Beijing by armored train. President Trump has also talked about wanting to meet Kim this year. So this show of force tomorrow in Beijing will be very closely watched by the U.S., as it will also be its own show of unity.
All right, Janice, thank you very much. Well, coming up, tuning out, more people choosing to skip the news for their mental health. We're going to unpack the trend and how to stay informed without compromising your well-being.
Also, navigating loss on social media. A look at how TikTok is helping some people process their grief. Morning News Now will be right back.
We are back with our weekly mental health check-in. This week, we're going to dive into how the news can take a toll on our moods, on our mental health, and why some people are opting to avoid it altogether.
Plus, we're exploring the impact of being the youngest in the family.
Joining us now for more is psychotherapist Dr. Robbie Ludwig. Dr. Ludwig, good morning. All right, let's start with this one. More people tuning out the news. Obviously, first and foremost, thank you to those of you who are not and who are with us this morning. But this is a serious topic. I mean, this recent report, it says news avoidance, as it's called. It's at record highs globally. About 40% of those surveyed across nearly 50 countries, they say that they're either sometimes or often avoiding the news. Tell us, why is it that we think people are choosing not to watch the news? And is there any way that you can kind of strike a balance where you could stay informed, you could tune in to something like our show and not, spiral about what you learn?
Right. There used to be a saying, if it bleeds, it leads. And now news is not just on television or on YouTube, but it's 24/7 through our phones. And it's very divisive information, and it gets us to feel things very intensely. And it's a lot of the times negative. And so people are noticing they're feeling more hopeless, they're feeling more depressed, they're feeling more impotent in terms of what they can do to make a change. And when they take a break and curate their news, they're feeling much better, which is really a wise decision. You want to be engaged and know what's going on, but it doesn't have to be 24/7.
Good advice.
Let's take a look at a report about family dynamics, something I think a lot of families discuss, specifically when it comes to the younger brother. There's this research that finds there's some truth behind that opinion that thought that younger brothers can be seen as more carefree compared with their elder siblings. Talk about what we're learning, why that is.
Well, certainly birth order is an influence, but it's not the only influence. So when you're the youngest child, your parents are probably more lenient. You have the opportunity to learn from older siblings and learn valuable lessons, and you probably have less rules. But it also is very important, the family that you grow up in and the circumstances going on within that family that also shape who we are, including genetics. But yeah, I mean, the youngest one is kind of always the baby, and it helps them to see themselves very differently than older and middle siblings.
Dr. Rabi, also, it is U.S. Open season. We love it around here. In New York, if you're lucky enough to come and visit, a new piece in the New York Times, look at this picture, too, on your screen. It highlights how this year more players are traveling with their dogs. I mean, even we've learned at the Open that pets get a lanyard with their own photo on it. And players say it brings them comfort, it brings them balance. Walk us through kind of like the bigger picture here. How can leaning on pets help you to manage stress or help, at a period that is like super high profile potentially for these people and can cause stress?
Yeah, so this is such a great story, and what we know about pets, and even in some cases, pets are really considered part of the family, and they provide us with unconditional love, and it also provides us the opportunity to love and care for another being with intensity, getting ourselves to kind of not think about our problems as much. They do reduce our stress hormones. We do know that. We feel less lonely when there are pets involved in the picture, and they are our companions. So when you put that all together, it's really the perfect combination for feeling connected, less lonely, loved, and reduced stress.
And Bella, the dog right there, is also very good at retrieving balls. So she's got it all down.
So cute. Dr. Ludwig.
Sounds like they live a good life.
Exactly.
Yeah, those dogs.
You go. Travel the world. It's awesome. Dr. Ludwig, thank you so much. Good to see you.
Thank you.
In a world shaped by social media, the way we navigate loss, the grieving process, does seem to be shifting. Usually, people use their online platforms for entertainment, maybe some inspiration, even education. But some are now turning to social media to memorialize the people they've lost, and that's creating a community to help them feel less alone in their grief. NBC News correspondent Priya Sridhar takes a closer look.
Social media, known as a hotbed of glossy, polished, picture-perfect lives with people sharing happiness, fun, and pleasure. But some are finding community when they're feeling something else.
Honestly, it's helped me feel less alone.
Grief.
Hey, y'all, it's bedtime snack time. If you're new here, I'm a recent widow.
That's Donna Clemens. She was married to her husband, Patrick, for 43 years and started posting videos a few months after he passed in March.
Nighttime's the hardest time for me because it's when my husband and I would have a snack together and talk about our day. So I started talking about my day to all my friends on TikTok.
Donna originally thought nobody would care, but is now a mini celebrity, gaining hundreds of thousands of followers in just months.
It just really filled a void in my life to be able to get on there and do that. So many people started getting on and commenting back, and a lot of times it would be so healing for me.
Family psychologist Dr. Jennifer Hartstein says it has become more common for people to go online during hard times.
So social media gets a pretty bad rap for a lot of things. But when it comes to something like grief, it can be a really empowering space for people.
Validation, understanding, and acceptance, key in processing grief. And she says social media can sometimes be a place to do that.
Kind of the beauty about it is it's decreasing the stigma that we shouldn't be talking about people that have passed, and allows us to have conversation, keep them alive, keep them in our memories. And that's really important for many of us as we're grieving.
That's exactly what Casey Bradley is trying to do, too, after losing her older brother, Jack, 8 months ago.
To continue sharing memories about him has been really helpful. And then, of course, in turn, I'm getting these comments of people saying, I'm listening. I'm here and I'm listening. Tell me another memory. And that feeling is indescribable.
Casey shared in her first post about her brother, she was hoping to use it as a tool to motivate herself to get up and out of bed every day.
I need to figure out how for myself to process the grief and to simply learn to live again.
And slowly she has, enjoying solo dates, marathon training in honor of her brother, and even attending grieving events. Through it all, never losing sight of her brother.
His death was a moment, but his life was a whole story. And that's the story that I want to remember. And that's the story that I want to share with other people.
And Donna says bedtime snack time is one of her favorite parts of the day again, thanks to her new connections.
I just feel like we're such good friends on TikTok, this community. And, I feel like I need to read every single comment. That's one big thing that it's given me. It's just a sense of responsibility.
In a time when many comments around the internet are dark and mean, some users are finding solace.
Our thanks to Sridhar for that report.
Coming up, housing help. The White House announcing it's looking to the country's housing affordability crisis. After the break, more on the new measures now in the works.
And if you've ever looked at a menu and thought, I wish I could order everything, well, you might be in luck. I'm going to serve up the new items that are taking flight. Morning News Now will be right back.
Welcome back. Let's get a look at what's making news on Wall Street this morning. The White House is teasing new plans to hedge housing costs in a red-hot real estate market.
CNBC's Silvana Henao has that and more in your Money Minute. Silvana, good morning.
Hey, Joe. Hey, Savannah. Good morning to you. Yeah, so Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the Trump administration plans to tackle the high cost of housing. So he tells Reuters that the president may declare a national housing emergency this fall to address rising prices and lack of supply. He says the White House is looking at ways to simplify building permits to boost construction, which would increase housing supply and help bring costs down. TikTok is now letting everyone DM each other with voice memos and pictures. Now, TikTok tells TechCrunch all users should see those features in the coming weeks, and they'll only be available to account holders 16 years and older, and you will be limited to sending up to 9 images and videos at a time. And both memos and videos, well, they can't be more than a minute long. And Starbucks CEO says pumpkin spice season drove a surge in sales last week. So Brian Niccol giving the update in an internal memo seen by Bloomberg. And it's welcome news for the company, which is working to turn around a string of sales declines. Now, in addition to the pumpkin spice latte, the fall menu also includes a pumpkin cream cold brew, chai, and pecan crunch oat milk latte, guys.
A lot of fall right there.
I know.
It sure is.
Once again, post-Labor Day, so I'm good with it. Thanks, Silvana.
You got it.
Speaking of food, when you're dining out and see the word flight, you might picture wine or beer, which is the way most of us first experience the trend. You get 3 or 4 glasses of something offering up a spectrum of flavors. But these days, flights aren't just limited to beverages. They're all over the menu, giving diners a chance to sample a few different things, smaller sizes without having to share with others. And often the flights cost about the same as a regular-sized version of whatever you're craving. This morning, we're taking a look at the popular trend.
When we say flights are taking off, our definition of flight comes with a twist.
A reminder to folks, this is not a shot. You need to sip it, right?
Yeah, you need to sip it. You need to sip it.
At Maison Pickle in New York, they're shaking up the menu with a flight of 3 mini martinis, stirring interest in the classic cocktail and giving us a chance to mix it up with an array of options.
this way you can have several.
But still not feel like you're drinking too much.
Exactly. Or you can enjoy several different flavors. You can have variety without feeling like you've had too much.
Here, a single happy hour martini is $12, while the flight of mini drinks is $10. From conventional gin martinis to trendy Cosmos, they're served in downsized glassware.
The little glasses are cute. Is that part of the appeal?
They're the cutest, yes. That is like most of the appeal.
Yet they're not too small to reenact Leonardo DiCaprio's meme-worthy Great Gatsby toast. These days, flights are landing all over the menu, from butter spreads to a 9-course taco experience at the Waldorf Astoria in Los Cabos. Yelp says last year, searches for cookie flights jumped 384%, egg flights hopped nearly 500%, and coffee flights jolted to new heights, up more than 3,000%. Pasta's trending too.
You have lamb sausage.
Which brings us to La Lanterna di Vittorio. For the last few years, they've served lasagna flights.
We just kind of got in the kitchen and started playing around.
How did people respond to it?
You know, it was an instant hit.
They have, no joke, 12 different kinds of lasagna.
That is smoked salmon, onion, and caper.
Oh, wow.
So you can get a flight of 4 for $26.50, which is about the same price as one full-size lasagna.
This has shrimp, so I know I'll love it. Yum.
Or maybe do 3 flights to taste test all 12. The perfect ingredient for trending TikTok videos.
It just hits. For whatever reason, lasagna strikes a chord in people.
We can't end our meal without a dessert flight. At Ample Hills, you get an ample sample, 6 scoops of ice cream.
If I do more chocolate, will you judge me?
Oh, no, there's no judgment.
All right, let's do chocolate fudge then.
Okay.
They've been doing this since 2012.
That is delicious.
And it remains one of the best-selling items on the menu.
I think when we're offering 24 flavors, people have indecision. And how do you solve indecision? By giving them what they want.
Because you can't just pick one.
You can't just pick 1, or 2, or 3. Why not 6?
And to that, we say cheers.
And what else can you turn into a flight? Well, the only limit is your imagination. We found deviled egg flights, pancake flights, and Jell-O shot flights. Something for everyone. Coming up, a ride to remember for a busload of kids.
This is the ultimate first impression.
Oh, for sure. For some kids, it's their first time riding a bus at all.
When we return, we'll introduce you to the bus driver who made the first day of school a little fancy and a lot of fun. You're watching Morning News Now. Welcome back. We are ending the hour by heading back to school with a Virginia bus driver who's going the extra mile to make a good impression on his students' first day. NBC News correspondent George Solis hopped on board.
The name's Champion, Lucas Champion. And no, he's not a James Bond impersonator. And as you'll hear, there's good reason he's dressed to the nines.
I was pretty stressed out, just about the first day. It's my first day of school, not as a student. I have this thing. Let me throw it on real quick.
Inspired by ZZ Top's Sharp Dressed Man.
Every girl crazy about a sharp dressed man.
This Fairfax County, Virginia public school driver decided to don his groomsman black tuxedo to welcome students on board his bus to start the new school year.
It's like, bingo. I got it. I got to go find it.
I mean, this is the ultimate first impression.
Oh, for sure. For some kids, it's their first time riding a bus at all.
The sartorial splendor spotted by his former teacher, Amy Hard, who initially clocked the sharp-dressed driver and soon realized it was one of her own.
I look and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Lucas Champion. He's like, hi.
And like any good educator, she wanted to make sure his first day was memorialized in a now viral photo.
You have that old stereotype of like this mean bus driver, and you get on and you're met with these just smiling eyes and somebody who's having a bit of fun.
Champion says the tux may very well become part of a new annual tradition, bringing new meaning to dressing for the job you want.
Find a way to smile, to have fun in your day, even if it's something simple. And you never know, it might make somebody else's day a little brighter.
Thanks to a bus driver going that extra mile. George Solis, NBC News.
I feel like this could be a trend. Like we could see more bus drivers and others taking this on.
Yeah, I mean, how great would that be?
Exactly. That's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Stay with us, though. The news continues right now. Good morning. Thanks for being with us this Tuesday. I'm Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, new COVID questions from the White House. President Trump now setting his sights on Big Pharma, demanding companies prove just how well their vaccines work, vaccines that were fast-tracked during Mr. Trump's first term. The administration also ramping up its rhetoric on potential D.C.-style immigration crackdowns in other major cities like Chicago. We've got the very latest from Washington. Also this morning, a terrifying shark attack in the Florida Keys, rattling the family of an 8-year-old boy. The innocent snorkeling adventure turns scary, and how beachgoers can stay safe as summer winds down. Plus, the Pennsylvania man being hailed as a Hershey Park hero, caught on camera literally leaping into action to save a young boy alone on a monorail track. Why he says his own dad's strength helped bring one family safely back together. And later in the hour, we're talking money moves with the Powerball jackpot reaching $1.3 billion. How might you set yourself up for financial success if you strike it big? Tips from a financial expert. That's like a story that will appeal to probably no one in the end, but it's fun to imagine.
So true. Yeah, exactly. It is getting to the point, though, where I'm like, I should just buy a ticket.
There you go.
You know.
Give it a shot. Can't win if you don't play, as they say. Let's begin this hour with President Trump calling on pharmaceutical companies to publicly prove the effectiveness of their COVID drugs. And that's the word he used, drugs.
The president did not specify whether he was referring to vaccines or other antiviral medications. It comes after he suggested that the question over whether the shots had saved lives had, quote, ripped apart the CDC. And as the number of COVID cases and hospitalizations is rising heading into the fall season. Several of the agency's top officials resigned in protest last week after the Trump administration fired its director amid a rift over these vaccine policies. Well, meanwhile, officials in Chicago are bracing for the next stage of President Trump's federal crackdown on crime and immigration. A lot going on here. We have NBC News senior White House correspondent Garrett Haake with the details.
The president returns to work today, facing anger on the streets of several major cities over his deployment of the National Guard to fight crime, and reports that he'll soon ramp up immigration enforcement, including in Chicago, which saw large protests yesterday. And there is also discontent at the nation's health agencies, with 9 former CDC directors warning about the direction public health is headed under President Trump. On Monday, the president publicly questioned the science behind the COVID vaccines, the development of which were a major achievement of his first term, credited with saving millions of lives. A week of tests for the White House as President Trump considers expanding the deployment of troops in major U.S. cities, while also facing internal turmoil at his health agencies.
ICE agents have got to go! Hey, hey!
In Washington, D.C. on Labor Day, protesters pushing back against President Trump's use of federal forces.
Free D.C.! Free D.C.!
And in Chicago, crowds demanding Trump not expand his federal law enforcement surge there.
No troops in Chicago! No troops in Chicago!
The president has attacked Chicago for its high crime rates, even though the city's crime and murder rates are falling.
Everybody knows Chicago is a hellhole right now.
2 federal law enforcement officials tell NBC News that ICE, Border Patrol, and other federal agencies plan to scale up operations to arrest undocumented immigrants in Chicago as early as this week. As the president mulls that move, he'll also face questions in Washington this week over his vaccine policy, after he yesterday appeared to question the effectiveness of the COVID vaccines. They were first developed under his watch. In a post on Truth Social, Mr. Trump challenging pharmaceutical companies to, quote, justify the success of their various COVID drugs. It comes years after he launched Operation Warp Speed in his first term, which fast-tracked vaccine production, and which the president has long praised as a success.
We're on the verge of another American medical miracle.
And amid extraordinary turmoil at the nation's health agencies. On Monday, 9 former heads of the CDC slammed Trump's Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in a blistering New York Times op-ed, accusing him of, quote, endangering every American's health. and blasting Kennedy's firing of CDC Director Dr. Susan Menarez last week that led to 4 top leaders at the agency resigning in protest. The former CDC head's writing that Menarez refused to, quote, rubber stamp his dangerous and unfounded vaccine recommendations. Law enforcement and administration officials have all pointed towards Chicago being the next major city to see an immigration crackdown, which could ultimately involve the National Guard being deployed to back up federal agents, much like we saw in Los Angeles earlier this year. The administration has made it clear they're willing to send federal officials to so-called sanctuary cities that don't otherwise work with immigration enforcement, meaning we're keeping an eye on places like Baltimore, Boston, and New York City, where local officials have all said, don't send troops, Mr. President. We don't want them or need them.
All right, Garrett, thank you.
Lawmakers are facing a long list of pressing issues as Congress returns today following a month-long break.
Yeah, issues like funding the federal government, lingering concerns around the Jeffrey Epstein case, and the turnover at the CDC. That's all expected to keep representatives busy over the next few days.
NBC News Chief Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles joins us now. So, Ryan, clearly the most urgent issue facing lawmakers, again, the federal government. Are we likely to see a package that gets us to the fund, that gets us to what to do with funds before they run out at the end of the month? I mean, what are the biggest challenges here?
Yeah, Joe, there's a real possibility that the federal government shuts down before the end of the month. That's when government funding runs out, and in order for government funding to continue flowing, it requires the cooperation of both Republicans and Democrats. And right now, Democrats are frustrated with the direction of the Trump administration. They'd like to send a message to their base that wants them to stand up to Donald Trump. And there's also this issue that when they federally appropriate money through Congress to the administration, that there's no guarantee President Trump will spend it. He just announced last week that he was canceling some $5 billion in federal funding that was appropriated by Congress. So this is going to be a real sticking point between Republicans and Democrats over the next month. Remember, government funding runs out on September 30th, so they do not have a lot of time to figure out a path forward.
Ryan, one of the other issues I just mentioned a moment ago, the Jeffrey Epstein case. I mean, that is expected to cast a shadow over Washington again this week, and there's some news about what will be going on the Hill. What's happening?
Yeah, I think that the Trump administration was kind of hoping that Congress would go away for a month and then forget about the Epstein controversy. It's been exactly the opposite. As we get back here to Washington, Congress is ready to really step up their investigation into the convicted child sex offender. They're going to have a group of survivors on Capitol Hill both today and tomorrow, meeting with the House Oversight Committee that's leading the investigation into the Epstein affair. Then tomorrow there will be a public press conference with Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie, a Democrat and Republican, that are pushing for a resolution on the House floor that would force the Department of Justice to release all of the files related to this case. The House Oversight Committee is already starting to get some of those files. They've also subpoenaed the Epstein estate, and they're expected to get documents from the Epstein estate as soon as this week. Included in that tranche of documents could be that alleged birthday book, which the Wall Street Journal reported that President Trump contributed to. So there will be a lot of activity related to the Epstein controversy on Capitol Hill this week.
Ryan, we also know Congress is keeping an eye on something we were talking about just a moment ago, the turnover at the CDC, the Trump administration's controversial approach to vaccines. Tell us what is on the agenda this week. And notably, there are some Republicans who are worried about this too, right?
That's right, Joe. There are at least 3 Republican senators that have raised real concerns about the direction that Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Has taken the Centers for Disease Control. They want answers. They want to know why he decided to push out the leader of the CDC after she was only on the job for about a month. They also have real questions about the overhaul of the vaccine approval process and how that could impact Americans' access to the new COVID vaccine. They will get their opportunity to press RFK Jr. on these issues. He's scheduled to appear for a hearing on Thursday in front of the Senate Finance Committee. We expect that to be where he gets a lot of tough questions, guys.
All right, Ryan Nobles, thank you.
Well, Labor Day weekend may mark the unofficial end of the summer travel season, but for many Americans, it still felt like the middle of summer, right? I mean, temperatures in some places nearly 20 degrees above normal. Well, this year, the TSA says a record 17.4 million travelers passed through security checkpoints over the weekend, but it was not clear skies for everyone. Flights were halted in both Dallas and Philadelphia because of bad weather. NBC News correspondent Ryan Chandler is at Love Field in Dallas. He joins us with the latest. Hey, Ryan, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning. We have seen a pretty chaotic summer of travel. This, though, was easier. We saw smooth skies and open roads for most Americans. Look at that, just 1 minute in the pre-check line here at Dallas Love Field. Can't complain about that, especially given we saw 2.8 million Americans through TSA checkpoints yesterday, another 2.3 expected today, in what is one of the busiest Labor Day travel weekends of all time. Summer ran smoothly for most of us.
It has not been bad at all.
My flight got here super early, actually.
But others hitting some snags.
I'm going to miss my first day of school. We're currently stuck in Miami for another day because we missed our connecting flight to New York.
TSA reports 2.8 million travelers went through security checkpoints on Monday alone, while even more Americans took advantage of the low gas prices, currently at $3.19 a gallon.
We were prepared for lots of traffic.
Strong storms and winds forcing ground stops in Dallas and Philadelphia Monday. More severe weather soaking parts of Texas.
Look at all those people over there. They're all stuck.
Heavy downpours in Houston Sunday left drivers stranded, roads underwater. In San Antonio, 2 people killed in floodwaters.
An adult female who got caught up in the water. And then about 100 yards further down the creek, there was another body of a male.
Look at that, man.
And in Arizona, the second blinding dust storm moving through the area in less than a week. Meanwhile, lifeguards on high alert in Southern California as high surf reached up to 6 feet at times and strong rip currents made swimming dangerous. Los Angeles County lifeguards reporting nearly 600 ocean rescues and almost 400 medical calls over the holiday weekend. On the East Coast, nothing but sun. Beachgoers soaking up the summer before heading back to work.
It's a beautiful day, you know, last licks on the beach. It's wonderful and taking every advantage that I can.
So some snags, but also some good news, and we'll take all that we can get. This rush still not over, Savannah. Some 2.1 million people still expected to fly tomorrow. Savannah.
All right, Ryan, thank you so much.
Let's get to Angie Lastman now.
She is keeping an eye on the dangerous heat out west for us. Hey, Angie, good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning to you. We keep that heat rolling with these warnings and watches and advisories all up, mainly focused across parts of the west. The Pacific Northwest, you can see some heat warnings, places like Spokane, Bend, Los Angeles, all under those heat advisories as well, as temperatures will once again take a run at some record-breaking levels. We've got 99 for Boise, mid-80s for San Luis Obispo. We've got low 90s for Billings. All of those locations above average for this time of year. Different story for the middle of the country where we're running cooler than normal, and even parts of the East Coast, so just a touch below where we should be. Not quite as cool as what we're going to get tomorrow, though, across parts of the upper Midwest. That's where you'll see 60s and low 70s for your high temperatures in places like Minneapolis and Omaha. Still the 90s in Seattle, or the 80s in Seattle, rather, and the 90s in Salt Lake City. And then we kind of moderate things out by the time we get into the weekend with some cooler, more fall-like conditions settling in across the Great Lakes, but still those 80s and even 90s on tap across parts of the mid-Atlantic. Meanwhile, we've got still the tropics to talk about, and we're watching an area off the coast of Africa in the eastern Atlantic that likely will get its act together by the time we get into the later parts of this work week. So we're talking about a tropical depression, a really good chance of developing by the time we get later into the week, 70% here, and we'll see what happens with this system, but we'll be keeping a close eye on it here as the rest of the week goes on. In the meantime, a bit of thunderstorm activity working across parts of the upper Midwest and parts of the South. We've got a couple of cold fronts that we're tracking. The one across the South brings some of the isolated rain chances to the Southeast through the day today. And then some of those thunderstorms will ramp up across that northern tier of the country for the Midwest. And eventually the Great Lakes get a good dose of rain for tomorrow as that system continues to work to the east. So a couple of thunderstorms associated with that, but it's mainly going to be the heavy rain and those fall-like temperatures will be settling in behind it.
All right, we'll take most of it, right?
I know. Well, you got no choice, guys. I hate to break it to you.
That's all she's offering.
Thank you, Angie.
That's all I got. All right, well, if you have big dreams of winning that Powerball jackpot of more than $1 billion, you have still got a chance.
Yeah, no one matched all 6 numbers since May 31st. So now the estimated jackpot for Wednesday, that's tomorrow's drawing, $1.3 billion.
NBC News correspondent Jesse Kirst joins us with more. Jesse, good morning. How does this new jackpot compare with some of the biggest biggest prizes? It feels like we kind of talk about this a lot, so it's like put this one in context first, just how big it is. And what would the figure look like if you did want to take that lump sum?
Yeah, so first of all, guys, I thought I'd be retiring today, but here I am. There you are. No one won. All that means, though, is the pot's getting even bigger. To put this into context, Savannah, we're talking about now what Powerball says is the 9th largest jackpot for any U.S. jackpot game. So this is a historic amount we're talking about. $1.3 billion. That's around $600 million bucks if you take the lump sum. All of that is pre-tax, but I think you'd be doing okay either way. Your ticket last night did not win the grand prize, but don't throw it out just yet. Powerball says there were $10 million winners, and there were two $2 million winners, and they're scattered all over the country. I was texting with my mom earlier, by the way, and she hadn't checked her tickets yet. She's in New Jersey. There are 2 winning tickets in New Jersey, so I don't know. I got one here in Florida. Let's see how we did with this one. It says... processing, sorry, not a winner. So I think this pretty much sums up how a lot of us are feeling right about now. But that just means it's time to get a new one and keep the good times rolling Wednesday night, guys.
I really did want that moment where we just saw you win like $1 million right there, and then we had to see what you actually did in that moment. So you mentioned there were some...
Keep working, because I don't know how far that would get me.
I should ask you, are you still with Willie there, where you are?
We do have Willie here. Willie, can you come over here for a second?
How about Willie?
We're trying to give him a break. Here's the real reason someone needs to win this jackpot. This man deserves a day off.
He does. He does.
I'm waiting on my vacation. Whoever wins now, I'm looking for you.
I want Willie to do the drawing on Wednesday night.
Willie, have you made your merch yet?
They want you to do the drawing Wednesday night. That's their new idea. What do you think of that?
I'm down for it.
All right, Powerball. He's ready.
I'm ready.
Just have to, try to get him to call out sick on Thursday. But I have a feeling we're both going to be here. We're both going to be here Thursday morning.
We'll be checking back in with you guys.
I call the right numbers to put both our tickets, you know.
All right.
We still need Powerball Willie merch.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. You know? Jesse and Willie, thank you both. And later on, we are actually going to have advice from a financial expert what the smart money moves are if you do win on Wednesday.
There you go. We've got much more to come, though, on this hour of Morning News Now, including the Pennsylvania man being hailed as a hero this morning after leaping into action to rescue this young boy alone on a monorail track in Hershey Park.
First, after the break, a scary shark encounter in the Florida Keys, ending with an 8-year-old boy airlifted to a Miami hospital. We've got the latest on his condition as a pretty concerning summer of sightings rolls on. That's next. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Florida, a family holiday ended in a scary way when an 8-year-old boy snorkeling in Key Largo was attacked by a shark. He had to be airlifted to a hospital in Miami. It's just the latest incident in what has been a summer full of shark sightings, warnings, even beach closures along the East Coast. NBC News correspondent George Solis joins us now from Miami with the latest. George, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Joe. I mean, you can imagine this is a nightmare scenario for this family. They're out enjoying the holiday weekend. They're in the water. A shark bites this 8-year-old boy just above the knee, according to officials. He then has to be airlifted here to the hospital. No word yet of his complete condition. But as you mentioned, it comes as just there's been so many of these shark incidents over this summer.
This morning, a shark attack in the Florida Keys, causing a nightmare ending to the holiday weekend for one family.
He has he's bitten up.
According to authorities, an 8-year-old boy was snorkeling when he was bitten by a shark in Key Largo.
Witness on seeing that significant amount of blood loss.
The child was airlifted to a hospital in Miami for treatment.
The injury is significant. He's been applied 2 tourniquets.
Sharks are most active in Florida waters between April and October. That's also when people are most likely to be swimming in the ocean. Though attacks are still very rare, families are on the lookout. Yesterday's attack, not the first for a child in Florida this summer.
And I could see her hand hanging like a piece and just blood everywhere.
Leah Lendl was severely injured by a shark while snorkeling with her family in Boca Grande in June.
I didn't see anything. I was just snorkeling.
The 9-year-old airlifted to a Tampa hospital for emergency surgery to save her hand.
Something hard bit me, and then it tried to take me away. Then I started screaming with my mom, and we ran to the road.
And dramatic shark sightings have been taking place up and down the East Coast in recent months. With Americans soaking up the last of the warm weather, beach towns still on the alert.
We have had more sightings in 2 years than the previous 10.
Joe, again, officials underscoring that shark bites and attacks are extremely rare. But if you are concerned, a couple tips from the experts. Of course, swim in a group, stay close to the shore, and avoid going into the waters during dusk or twilight hours when sharks generally tend to be most active. And of course, always swim where there's a lifeguard. And as soon as you hear that whistle, to make sure to get out. Joe?
All right, George, thank you.
Well, we are learning new details this morning about a harrowing scene at a Pennsylvania amusement park. You probably saw this video. This stranger who risked it all to save a child.
It unfolded at Hershey Park when a little boy was spotted walking along a monorail track some 20 feet in the air. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock covered this yesterday. He spoke with the man who was at the center of this rescue. Joins us now. Sam, good morning.
He's got the perfect nickname already. The Hershey Hero.
Yes,
because of course, why not?
Good.
You know, John Sampson is his name. He's a veterinarian from the suburbs of Philly, guys, who just happened to be visiting Hershey for the first time over the weekend on Saturday. He has 3 young kids of his own, 7, 5, and 2. He says he was on stroller duty when he looked up and saw something that should not be there, a child walking along a narrow track. Sampson's not technically a superhero, but he certainly did a very good impression of one. The screams echoed across Hershey Park this weekend when a young boy suddenly appeared atop a shutdown monorail. John Sampson springing into action, saying his fatherly instincts kicked in. As a dad of 3, you see a young child in danger, and what's going through your head?
That's exactly it. Is being a dad of 3 gives you a big different perspective on everything. So you see a child in danger, instantly, how can I help?
Go that way! Go that way! As a frenzy of parkgoers called out to the boy, who covered his ears in fear, Sampson literally scaled a nearby ice cream stand.
On the side of it, there's a fence, and then I climbed up on that, balanced on that, climbed up on the roof from there, and then it was a straight shot from there.
By straight shot, the veterinarian means that leap onto the monorail. Where did this sort of like MacGyver-level skill set come from?
I'll call it more of like dad strength.
Moments later, the boy was in the father of 3's arms and then helped by another man back to the ground. What was the sensation like when you felt this boy in your arms? Did he seem relieved instantaneously?
Oh, instantly. And just super scared, and then just gripping me that you knew that he was scared and so happy to be in somebody's arms.
Hershey Park telling NBC News, once the boy was reported missing by his parents, while our team was actively searching, the child entered a secured area for the monorail, which was not in operation. The ride was closed and safeguarded by a chained closure at the entrance and barricaded turnstile at the platform. While it's still not clear how he got up on that track, the takeaway for Sampson remained simple.
Everybody thinks it's like a big hero thing. I like to think it's just a parent thing. Or any normal adult. You might not have to be a parent. You just have to be somebody who wants to help.
I mean, what? Just a hero. Like you said, the Hershey hero. Has he connected with this family at all?
Right. So he really wanted to be able to give the family a big hug that day. They left, though, because they were so overwhelmed, Savannah. They were so really just relieved that their son was okay. They went to check on him. The next day, though, he says that they gave him a phone call and said just a really big thank you. He was gratified to hear from them. I asked Mr. Sampson, you know, what is it like in terms of your own risk of being killed, right? You're up there 20 feet above in the air. I was like, do you have any sort of like military background, athletic background? How did you scale a wall and get up there? He's like, no, and no. I have dad background. So the reality is dad is Superman. In this case, he saved a child's life. It's pretty amazing.
Dad background.
Incredible.
Stroller duty to hero duty. Crazy. Sam, thank you so much.
We are back now with a closer look at what's making news in the world of politics this morning, starting with a longtime representative getting set to leave Congress. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Melanie Zanona joins us with all the latest. Mel, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. We start on Capitol Hill, where longtime Democratic Congressman Jerry Nadler is calling it quits. Nadler is a liberal icon. He's also the longest-serving member of the New York delegation. And as the former chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Nadler was at the center of not 1, not 2, but 3 presidential impeachments. And in revealing his retirement plans to the New York Times, Nadler admitted that his party is in the middle of a generational shift, and it's time to pass the baton. Next, we zoom out to Virginia and New Jersey, where the sprint to Election Day has already begun. Both states will both be home to governor's races this fall and will provide one of the biggest tests for both parties since the 2024 presidential election. In New Jersey, Democrat Mikey Sherrill and Republican Jack Ciattarelli are locked in the competitive race that has been defined by affordability issues and the popularity of President Trump. And meanwhile, in Virginia, Democrat Abigail Spanberger has seen success in the polls by attacking Republican Winsome Earl Steers over economic issues and Trump's mega bill. Early voting kicks off in just 2 weeks. And finally, Congress is returning from their summer recess today with a packed to-do list, and tensions are already flaring. But there are some bipartisan bills flying under the radar, like a bill to fix the so-called wounded veterans tax. That's a federal policy preventing thousands of veterans from getting their full retirement benefits if they get injured in combat. Now, Congress is looking to change that.
With all the bickering and polarization in Washington, you might be surprised to hear there's actually bipartisan legislation crawling its way through these halls of Congress.
Veterans have always been my top priority in the United States Congress.
That's Republican Florida Representative Gus Bilirakis, who is sponsoring a bill that's trying to fix the so-called wounded veterans tax.
These are true American heroes, and we're cheating them out and not getting their full benefit.
He's talking about people like Army Staff Sergeant Dan Nevins. He was deployed to Iraq in 2004 as a squad leader when an improvised explosive device detonated beneath his vehicle.
I remember everything about that day. Fortunately or unfortunately.
The blast killed his platoon sergeant and took both of Nevin's legs.
The last sort of vision, if you will. And it was my 10-year-old daughter, but she was all grown up and dressed in white head to toe and walking down the aisle without her dad. And I was like, I'm alive. I have to do something to keep it that way.
After a painful and lengthy recovery, which included 36 surgeries and an 18-month stay at Walter Reed Hospital, Nevins started to live life again, even picking up new skills, like becoming a certified yoga instructor.
I was like, yoga? That, like, wrong dude. It made the nightmare stops.
When he was forced to retire from the military in 2006 because of his injuries, Nevins thought he'd be financially taken care of. But that wasn't the case.
It's a tragedy, really.
Nevins found out the hard way. Under current federal policy, some injured veterans who retire early, often not by choice, get $1 taken out of their retirement for every $1 they receive in disability pay.
I was told I could not receive both. You could either have your retirement or the VA.
We spoke to Nevins ahead of Memorial Day when he traveled to Washington to advocate for this bipartisan bill that would give all veterans their full retirement and disability pay. Democrat Richard Blumenthal is leading the effort in the Senate.
So they're essentially being penalized financially.
They're being penalized for being wounded.
The bill would impact about 50,000 veterans, currently losing out on $1,900 a month because of the policy.
Essentially, it's about simple justice and fairness.
But the legislation is costly.
We have to find an offset, and we're working on that as well.
And comes at a time when the Trump administration is looking to trim government spending. A spokesman for the VA said the agency does not typically comment on pending legislation and vowed there will be no cuts to health care or benefits for veterans. The Department of Defense did not return a request for comment. Bilirakis was in Greece for his son's wedding earlier this summer, flying back to D.C. to cast a pivotal vote on Trump's massive tax and spending bill. Now he's hoping he can leverage that goodwill.
Any political capital that I have, I'm going to use it for our veterans.
Nevins hoping his personal experience will help inspire action.
If it takes sharing a story or like digging up some uncomfortable wounds, then so be it.
And while government funding is at the top of Congress's to-do list, the House is also aiming to begin work this month on an annual defense policy bill. Some members of Congress want to use that piece of must-pass legislation to fix the wounded veterans tax.
All right.
Back to you,
Important
Joe.
report, Mel. Thank you so much for sharing that. Appreciate it. In China, a mosquito-borne virus is spreading rapidly. The government says it's intensifying mosquito prevention there after Hong Kong confirmed 13 cases over the weekend. Here in the U.S., the CDC recently upgraded its travel warning for a province on the mainland. NBC News international correspondent Janice Mackey-Frayer has more.
For weeks, health officials in southern China have been waging war on mosquitoes, spraying, at times using drones to disperse insecticide to stop the spread of the mosquito-borne virus called chikungunya. The disease isn't rare in other parts of the world, including Mexico and Latin America, but it is unusual to have big outbreaks of the virus here in China. More than 10,000 cases in Guangdong province alone and counting.
Chikungunya virus is very closely resembling other mosquito-borne viruses like dengue clinically, but they belong to different families.
All it takes is one bite from a chikungunya-infected mosquito to develop symptoms like fever, joint pain, and fatigue. Some patients develop conjunctivitis and rashes. What's worse, symptoms can linger for weeks, months, or even longer. Experts say chikungunya is rarely fatal, but the pain can be debilitating. The rise in chikungunya infections isn't confined to China. Outbreaks are spreading across Asia and parts of Europe, too, mainly because people travel. So someone gets stung in one country, then hops on a plane with the virus in their bloodstream to wherever they're going, and passes it to another mosquito, which stings another person, and so on.
That's the nature of the virus, that it is very transmissible from a mosquito to a human to a mosquito.
Chikungunya has been reported in nearly 200 countries, basically on every continent except Antarctica. The World Health Organization figures nearly 5.6 billion people live in areas where the sort of mosquito that transmits the virus can thrive.
The U.S. CDC issued a travel health notice for Guangdong in August because of chikungunya, though big outbreaks aren't expected in the U.S. because people in warmer areas tend to spend time indoors and use air conditioning. Still, authorities in southern China are going all out with measures reminiscent of COVID-19 restrictions here, like mosquito-proof isolation beds in clinics and an official order against having any standing water where mosquitoes can breed, including coffee machines and flower pots.
The southern Chinese states have been blessed by having a cold winter months. This helps to clear the mosquitoes. But whether they persist on thereafter really depends on the authorities eliminating every infected mosquito there is.
The bigger challenge is the impact of climate change, with rising temperatures and more severe wet weather creating new habitats for virus-carrying mosquitoes to thrive.
All these climate changes, remember, humans are not alone in this globe. We're living with animals, birds, various other species, as well as all these factors, including mosquitoes, ticks, and other factors. So we're just one part of the ecosystem.
For protection, experts recommend mosquito repellent and covering up, as well as postponing travel to areas with chikungunya outbreaks to avoid the risk of a sting that may prove dangerous. Janice Mackey-Freyer, NBC News, Chongqing, China.
Coming up, it is the tantalizing talk of the nation, Powerball fever heating up, with a $1.3 billion jackpot up for grabs. But let's say you actually win it all. What sort of money moves should you make to set yourself up for success? Turns out it's a little more complex than you might think. We're going to talk about it next. We're back now with a closer look at your electric bill. If you've noticed it climbing up, you are not alone. The price comparison site Energy Sage says electricity rates have increased in 2/3 of states in the last year. NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung joins us with more. So first of all, just big picture, how much are costs rising by? What's behind the surge in some of these places?
Well, as that stat showed, a lot of people are noticing their electricity bills going up, and more specifically 5.5%. That's how much bills have risen over the last year, which means that if you're paying $200 a month in electricity costs last year, well, now that's $211 per month, which over the course of a year is over $130. So this is no small change. And the reason for all of this is for a few factors. First off, it's getting hotter, which means that you're using your AC a little bit more. But also there are external factors that don't really have anything to do with you or me specifically. Things like electric vehicles that are using the grid more often. And then also artificial intelligence data centers. This is a big one. 4% of the entire nation's electricity are being used by these AI data centers. And by the way, Joe, that's projected to go up to 12% by 2028, which is also increasing the cost.
I was just thinking that is something that's going to go up exponentially, I have to imagine,
Yep.
over the years. I know when we talk about tips and tricks, you talk about doing a home sweep to look for vampire devices.
Scary.
Not a
Yeah.
Halloween reference
Right.
here. This is a year-round thing. What are we talking about?
Yeah, well, these are devices that you have plugged in, which even if you don't actively use them, are still using electricity. So I'm thinking of things like TVs, gaming consoles. If you unplug those, even when you're not using them, that could save you dollars every single month. But when you think about even a coffee pot, there are some statistics that show a coffee pot that's not only being used only once a day. If it's plugged in, that could be $60 a year.
Oh my goodness.
Just for having it plugged in. So sweep your house, make sure you unplug anything that you don't need, that isn't actively used on a regular basis. But also, and I know a lot of people feel strongly about this, the thermostat. Keeping it higher during the summer to around 78 degrees, according to the Department of Energy, is going to help you save 10%. Of course, not many people can handle that sweat indoors. I'm one of
What's
those
the point of having it?
What's the point of having it? But also there's fans, Joe. If you use a fan, that could cool your place by 4 degrees. If it's not that dramatic of a temperature outside, that's a good option to go.
That's a good point. Obviously, the point is to save money, as we're talking about here. But are there some things worth buying, investing in to get long-term savings?
Okay, so we were talking about those vampire devices. So one way to get those vampire devices out of your house is by using smart plugs, which means that if you have a coffee pot and it's being passively plugged into your wall, but you only use it once every morning, if you put that smart plug in there, you can literally cut the electricity off to the outlets for that particular device. You could do it remotely from your phone. Smart plugs you can buy in bulk. You can get them online, super easy to use. That's a good option. Also, LED light bulbs. Not a lot of people know this. They use 80 to 90% less electricity than an incandescent bulb, and they're also a lot cooler. When you literally change them, you know how like when you try to change a hot light bulb, it hurts.
Burn
So
yourself.
that's kind of a plus there too.
We have the scars to prove it. All right,
Exactly.
Brian, good advice. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Yep. Staying on your wallet, let's get to a big C-suite shakeup at the Swiss food giant Nestle. CNBC's Silvana Henao has that and some other money news. Silvana, good morning.
Joe, good morning. Yes, so shares of Nestle are under pressure after the company fired its CEO due to an improper romantic relationship with a subordinate breaching the code of conduct. Laurent Frex had only been in the job for less than a year, taking over following the abrupt departure of Mark Schneider last November. Now, Nestle has struggled with sluggish sales in recent years, and the company will soon face a new rival following the $18 billion merger between Keurig Dr. Pepper and the parent company of Peet's Coffee last week. Meanwhile, Google Maps may soon keep your navigation updates where you can't lose them. Android Authority reports Google is starting to test live updates on some devices. Now, the testing appears to be limited for now, and these live updates, well, they keep your progress pinned on the screen while you travel, and this could be useful for drivers who might have moved over to another app. And British pubs are facing a last call. Industry data shows one pub is set to close every single day across Great Britain this year, or that's more than 375. Now, that would amount to more than 5,600 direct job losses. And this comes as the industry deals with several challenges, including rising costs and a pullback in consumer spending and a shift in drinking habits. The British pub sector provides a major contribution to the UK economy through direct revenue, employment, and its extensive chip supply chain, Joe.
All right, Silvana, thank you so much. The big Powerball jackpot now an estimated $1.3 billion after no one hit all the correct numbers in last night's drawing. And with a prize that large, it does make you wonder what would, or more importantly, what should you do with that kind of cash? Let's bring in our friend Mark Stieber for some advice. He is the Chief Tax Officer at Jackson Hewitt. Mark, good to have you with us. I know it's always kind of funny to do a segment that is directed at maybe one person, but hopefully that person is watching right now. I mean, more than $1 billion is an unfathomable amount of money. The odds are also incredibly low. Let's pretend for a moment, if I won, that means I got to buy a ticket, but if I won, what are the first steps I should take, Mark?
Well, there's important steps like remembering where your ticket is, of course, remembering all the people you promised that I'll give you half if I ever win one day. You don't want to forget those people either. Also, you want to save that ticket. You might get a tax break later. But in reality, what you really need to do is identify 4 people that will help you not be one of those stories later on that you lost all that money. First, you're going to need a legal advisor, depending on what state you're in and what type of other activity you got going on. You may very well be owing somebody else part of that money, especially if you bought it in an office pool. The second, and more importantly, in my opinion, is a tax advisor. These monies do not come without tax strings, and the federal is about 37%. And here's the thing that catches people off guard, not that I know many of these people. When you win your lottery money, they withhold 24%. That's not all you owe, because you're probably going to be in a higher bracket. You may have to come up with another 13% on tax day, and that doesn't even count state, like New York, 11%. So taxes can bite up to half your winnings, and you see that often. The third thing you need is a financial advisor, because legally you got your stuff covered, taxes, but you need somebody to say where to put that money. So in 10 years, you won't be going, where did all my money go? And I always say a fourth thing when I'm advising people, you need that advisor to tell you no. Don't buy into that investment. Don't buy that property down in Venezuela. You need somebody to do a reality check. So legal, you need a tax person, you need a financial advisor, and you need that person whispering over your ear, I wouldn't think that's a good idea, Joe. Don't be buying that. And you keep those in mind, and you won't be one of those sad stories.
All right, so saying no is one thing, but if you were to say yes to something, because someone might win and think, I want that big house, I want that dream vacation, what would you say yes to? What are the smarter ways to use the money?
Well, I believe in a diversified portfolio. You certainly want to invest into some things that can get a return on that investment, like equities or stocks or bonds. You also need some hard assets. I'm a big believer in hard assets, like a house, like real estate, something that you can point to. And then I also tell people, if you've got a lot of money and you want to do something, invest into something that is proven and that you enjoy. Sports memorabilia these days holds its value. You've seen the precious metal markets. Those have always been solid. Precious gemstones. So buy something that you like that can also appreciate over time. But you're not well suited if you just put it all in one thing, or you buy crypto and you think that's going to be the end all. Diversify your portfolio, and a good financial advisor can tell you how to do that and achieve your financial goals and protect you long term. And that is the real goal, long-term protection. Because if you're a young person, say 30 or 40, you're going to have that money last 70 years. And you see those stories all the time. People buy things that just disintegrate and go away, and then you're left with nothing. And it's a life-changing event, something that you should take advice from people who know how to manage it, not your Uncle Bob who said, here's where you need to put your money. So get some good guidance.
We only have a few seconds left here. You already talked about taxes. Is there anything else about taxes that's important to know?
Yeah, critically, they don't withhold the full amount you're going to owe, so you're going to need to put some aside. States can take a big bite. And one of the things that's important is not all states tax the lottery the same way. Florida's different than California. They also have some rules on where you bought it. So make sure you pay attention to the state rules as well. That can be 10% of your money. Paying a little attention to it and doing it the proper way can save you big bucks later.
All right, Mark, you'll hear from me Thursday after I win. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
appreciate
myself.
it. All right. Coming up, if you had to think about it, what's the most you might be able to do over the course of 139 days? Well, for 3 Scottish brothers, their answer was simple. Why not row across the entire Pacific Ocean in record time? An incredible 9,000+ mile journey capped off in Australia over the weekend. We are lucky enough to chat with those brothers. Up next, this is Morning News Now. We are back now with the incredible story of 3 brothers from Scotland who defied the odds in a journey across the Pacific Ocean, all in the name of clean water. You might know them from their viral social media posts as the McLean brothers. Well, Ewan, Jamie, and Lachlan have now set the record for completing the fastest unsupported row across the full Pacific. Their mission raised more than $1 million to help tens of thousands of people in Madagascar get access to clean water. And on Saturday, after rowing for 139 days, enduring storms, seasickness, and a near disaster, the brothers completed their 9,000-mile journey. We are lucky to be joined by the McLean brothers themselves, Ewan, Jamie, and Lachlan. Great to have you with us. I say this with all due respect. You look like 3 guys who just finished rowing across the Pacific. and I couldn't be happier to see you guys right now. It started in Lima, Peru. You ended on the east coast of Australia. Ewan, I'm going to start with you. Just describe the feeling of stepping on land for the first time after everything you went through.
What an amazing moment. I mean, we were so lucky that we had a lot of our friends and family that had come out to see that moment of us crossing the finish line. And I can tell you, I mean, you're so overwhelmed. It's a very euphoric moment, and the social contact's a bit weird. I think we were all being a bit strange in our kind of hellos and all that kind of stuff, just because we're just totally not used to seeing anyone. But what a special moment. We'll never forget it.
Well, we'll ease you back into the social contact here. You guys battled it all. Storms, injuries, and at one point, Lachlan thrown overboard. So I want to hear from you, Lachlan, the youngest on that. What was that moment like? Describe it. I mean, your resiliency was tested the most there, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was pretty scary. So it was right at the beginning of a night shift. And it was about 2/3 into the trip, we got hit by this anticyclone. And yeah, it was on the second night. I was just coming off the oars, swapped with Ewan. It was pitch black, kind of standing at the stern cabin, looked up, checking for a gap in the waves before I kind of scrambled into the cabin. And this rogue wave came in from nowhere. It was probably about 20 feet high and just totally took me off my feet. I got taken over the starboard side of the boat. And then fortunately I was tethered. So I was basically getting dragged behind the boat. I was very disorientated, wasn't sure if we'd capsized or what had happened. Ewan, I think it was worse for Ewan in some ways because he was on the oars, obviously looking backwards, looking at me. We get this big knockdown, big wave. The boat goes, pretty much halfway over and then comes back up, and I'm nowhere to be seen. But he reacted really quick. Came back and managed to kind of reach over and gave me a hand to get back into the boat, and I was not lost at sea.
Thank goodness that you were tethered there. So grateful for that. Of course, this is more than just about rowing. The McLean Foundation, established a couple years ago with an emphasis on clean water. Jamie, talk about why you started that passion project, why you do what you do.
Yeah, of course. So about 5 years ago, the three of us, we rowed across the Atlantic Ocean. And during that challenge, we were raising funds for clean water projects. And at the time, it was still an abstract idea for us. We knew it was an important cause and a essential building block to life, but we didn't know much more about it until after that row. And we went out to Madagascar and we saw in person, the difference of, a village that had access to clean water and one that didn't, and the stark contrast in the people's lives. And that really ignited a fire in all three of us. And we thought, what can we do to raise as much money, as much awareness as possible for this cause that we really believe in? And we thought, well, we know how to row. We know how to row very far. So what's the largest body of ocean? What's the largest body of water on the planet, the Pacific? So yeah, so that's why we set ourselves this challenge. And the mission isn't over yet. We've hit land. We're on dry land now, but we haven't quite hit our target of $1.4 US. So $1.4 million US. Sorry. So we're about 90% of the way there, and we're going to keep going until we hit that target.
So close. Incredible what you guys are doing. I appreciate you taking the time to join us this morning, guys. Congrats on everything. Good to have you back on land. That is going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now. Stay with us. The news continues right now.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.